It's a journey inward. Leadership is a really incredible journey inward. It's like, how far and how deep are you going to go?
Welcome to the Property Management Success Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry to uncover the secrets to profitability, efficiency, and achieving true freedom, whether it's your time, money, or lifestyle. I'm your host, Tony Klein, and I'm here to help you build a wildly successful property management business. Let's get to it.
There's a difference between a distance race and a timed race. And if you're engaged in running a timed race, and the time is, I'm doing this until I'm 50, or I'm doing this till I'm 60, or whatever it is, and I'm cool as long as I'm profitable. I'm cool hanging out at 200 units. That's a different race. I can talk more to the person that's like frustrated that they think that they're smarter than they are, because this is what I've struggled with most of my life. I think I'm smarter than I am. And then I get in my own way, and I'm like forceful. Like, oh, I want to get to 1,000 units, 2,000 units. Like, why isn't it happening yet? And then sometimes I wreck myself, or often I wreck myself because I'm too forceful, because I'm getting in my own way. I had a business coach tell me something recently, and he said, force negates. Force negates. Does that resonate with you in ultra running?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that when you were talking about pushing through and just trying to muscle your way through stuff. I have so many injuries from trying to push and go beyond simply because my will is there, but maybe my intelligence isn't.
Or the body's not there.
Yeah.
So you and I, here's a teaser. You and I are going to do Grand Canyon in June. And last time I was in the Grand Canyon, I did rim to rim to rim with some buddies of mine. I was in much better shape than I am now. And I remember that my competitive nature came out on the way back. So we started South Rim, we went down, and it was kind of cool, actually. We were to the north side of the rim by like 10:30 a.m. And we turned around, we came back, and we started coming back, and we got down in the box. You know what the box is?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be in the box after like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
No, and we were running through the box at 1
1 and
o'clock
3
in the afternoon, and it was hot, 1, 2 o'clock. And what had happened is we did a side quest over to the falls. What are the falls called?
Ribbon Falls.
Yeah, we went to Ribbon Falls. I was feeling really nauseous. I was getting kind of angry, annoyed, whatever. We get back on the main trail, and then I'm like, all right, you losers, let's go. And I was joking around, and I just start running. And it was a bad idea, but that's like kind of my MO in life, is like, I'm going to force my way through this. And it usually doesn't work well. And so anyway, some guy took my challenge and came and was running, and we started racing. We raced all the way through the box on the way back when it was over 100 degrees. Terrible idea. You know the end of the story already. Anyway, if you want to know the rest of the story, join us in June, and while we're hiking through the Grand Canyon, I'll tell you how that happened, how that worked out. But force negates. If you want to take a quantum leap in your business, it's weird, Tony. Often it requires less force. Most of the time, it requires less force. I remember when my property management business was at $350,000 in revenue. I joined Entrepreneur Organization Accelerator Group, and we got together with our first mastermind, and our mentor was there, and we're sitting down in the room, and he's like, listen to all of us talk about all of our problems. And he pulls out a whiteboard, and he draws the side of a jagged cliff, and he puts a stick figure on the side of the cliff, and he's like, this is you guys. You're just barely hanging on. You're like really struggling. You're really giving it your all, and you're wondering how long you can last. You know how when you rock climb, there's a pitch, there's different pitches. And sometimes the pitch is so difficult, if you don't move through it quick enough, there's no human alive that could stay in that spot. It's not a resting place. You have to move through it quickly. And like, I felt like I was in that place, and people listening might be in that place in their business where it's like, I can't keep doing this. I'm in a burnout if I stay where I am. I either need to back off or I need to move forward. I need to get through this phase. And he drew this cliff, and this guy was on, and at the top of the cliff, it started like the higher up the cliff, the more money you're making, more revenue. And it actually, the slope softened at the top of the cliff. And I was like, and he's like, actually, once you get over $1 million in revenue, it gets easier. And I was like, what? it gets, I thought I was applying, and this applies to running. You'll agree. I was applying my current level of exertion to make 350,000 in gross revenue in my business. And I was thinking, if I want to get over 1 million, I got to 3x this. How is that even possible? There's not enough hours in the day. I'm going to lose my mind. And sometimes in running, what does your brain do sometimes? You're running at a certain pace and your brain will play tricks on you. It'll say, if I multiply this feeling right now across another 20 miles, that's impossible. There's no way that could possibly happen. You have to stop now. That's when your brain sets like the self-protection mechanism kicks in and you're like, anyway, I'm talking too much. What say you, Tony?
Okay, so I want to bring that into a saying that we have in the ultra running community, which is, it never always gets worse. And when you talked about running at this capacity and thinking of, okay, if I want to grow, I'm going to have to 3x my current efforts.
My exertion.
Yes.
My force.
My lack of sleep, my stress level, my everything. And in that saying, and the first time I heard it never always gets worse was during a race when my mind was already kind of mushy anyway. But it was good that I heard it then, because I had no idea what it meant. Like, I couldn't figure it out. But what it means is, you can't assume just because it's this bad or it's this complicated at this stage, that as you go further into the race, as you get better, as you try to accomplish more, that it is going to keep that same trajectory and continue to get worse. Because like you said, it takes a little bit of effort to get started, but after you're going a little ways, it gets easier, it gets better. You get more trained, you're more knowledgeable about the situation. I want to make a statement, and then I want to tie this back to business. But when you were talking about force, it made me think, and I know this is going to sound real like hippie, voodoo, gypsy kind of talk, but I used to, when I was there's a trail by my house called Chimney Gulch, and it's about 1,800 feet of elevation gain in about 3.5 miles. And so it's not super runnable. It is runnable, but you're running at a pretty good pitch. And when I first started running that, it was me against the mountain. And as I've become older, wiser, stronger runner, I've realized it was never me against the mountain. It was me with the mountain. I was trying to force fit something as opposed to being in flow. And you said something and just triggered. I've never thought of this before, but in business, it's a balance between force and flow. Yeah. The more we try to force something, the more we're out of flow. And the more we're in flow, that means the more we've got our systems figured out, our finances figured out, our team figured out. And when you're in flow, that's when you can pour on new opportunity and take advantage of it. When you're forcing things, when you're struggling against bringing on new doors, when you're struggling with owners about specific the way you do certain things, and you're fighting with them about it, or they're complaining about something, you're forcing it, and you're going to see that reduction in productivity and all of the things that we've mentioned.
Here's another parallel between building a property management business and ultra running. When you ultra run, the strategy to follow to get to the finish line the fastest is to use the least amount of energy. So this ties in with what you're talking about. It's you with the mountain. There was a really accomplished runner that I started running trails with early on when I started running. And I noticed that he ran uphill differently than I did. I came from road marathoning where all of my strides were the same length with the same ground covered. And I noticed as soon as he hit an uprise, it could only be like a 15-foot stretch of uphill. His footfall placement, his cadence shifted, his footfall placement shortened, and it's like, and then downhill, like striding out a little more, like a complete adaptation to the ground before him. And what I learned eventually, as I started mirroring this activity, because he was very accomplished, he's a lot more seasoned than I was, is that what you can do when you get to a flow state is you can keep your energy expenditure constant. And that was one of the most key lessons I learned in ultra running, and it applies to life, is that I am not focused on keeping my pace the same in life, in ultra running races. I should be focused on keeping my effort similar and static, because
And
when
sustainable.
it's sustainable, because when you're doing this, and sometimes I wonder, like, I just have an emotional need for drama in my life. Like, I'm constantly, like, have you ever driven in a car with someone that's like all gas and then no gas and then all gas and then no? It's like, no, this is so disruptive. This is not smooth. It's not enjoyable. And I'm getting to the finish. Every professional runner knows that if they leave the pack and they go out and they sprint too early, the pack's eventually going to reel them back in, and now they're behind because they've expended too much energy. So, how does this apply to business? Are we using, Alex Hormozy would say, like, I learned at one point or another, somewhere along the line, that my business is not designed to meet my emotional needs. That's not the optimal way of running my business. And so sometimes I wonder if I create more drama and more stimulation for myself in my business than is necessary. I had a mentor one time tell me, Mark, business should be boring. What are you talking about? My business is the opposite of boring. I'm in property management. You don't understand. But if we can set up a cadence and we can set up buffers in our schedule, and we can make things routine enough that we can approach things with this level of energy, and we can hold that energy constant, and we can manage and be aware of that energy, and we can remove the spikes, we're going to move faster and further than the next person with less energy.
Okay, we've talked a lot about sort of some theoretical how we should act as far as don't be emotional, be boring. That might be the clip for the teaser.
The takeaway.
Yeah, don't be emotional, just be boring.
My
But we
staff
talked
wishes
about
I was more boring.
what's that?
My staff wishes I was boring.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well, no, you're not. But let's get practical. How do we have the audience listening? How do we help them figure out how to take some of the drama out, how to reduce some of the friction, get more in flow? What would you say it takes to have a company that is boring? I agree with you. Like the spikes, after we do this for a while, we get excited about a problem we can solve. That's entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
We want to be solving issues, and sometimes we can subconsciously create problems just so we feel like we're needed in the business.
Totally.
And so how do we create a business that's boring, that is even flow, that is continually producing, that's running at that maximum level, but in the green line, not the red line? How do we keep people where they're able to continue on? I heard Alex Hormozy, I was listening to him say something like he took a half a day off in like 12 months. He was supposed to go, he flew into some resort. They were there for half a day and realized it was beautiful and it had nothing to do with fueling him. So they packed up and left. And to me, it's like, I don't want to run that kind of business. Like, I don't want to be Alex Hormozy. He can be him. I'm happy to listen to him, but that would take me so far out of flow that I just couldn't live there. So how do we help people create a business that creates flow for them?
A couple of thoughts that come to mind, just for me, from my experience, is number one, get into some kind of predictable cadence. I think entrepreneurs they run headlong into building a business because they're looking for time freedom and financial freedom. And we're freedom junkies. We're like, I want to control my destiny and I want to do it my way. And so I think one of the things that we have to combat with our own selves, many of us, I mean, you got the engineers out there, and that's their different breed. And so they grow their business in a way not like I grew my business. I wanted to be so random and on the fly and on the spot. Like nobody controls my schedule, right? Okay. Eventually, one thing my business coach taught me is that structure begets freedom. Structure creates the possibility of freedom. And it's hard sometimes for maybe like a more sales-minded entrepreneur who's building a property management business to like embrace structure. We're running away from structure. We don't want corporate. That's why we're doing this. We're free. So one of the structures that has been vital for me to build predictability and build a faster momentum cadence of improvement is meetings. You know, there's a lot of books that talk about meetings are the heartbeat of the organization. Vern Harnish, that wrote the book Scaling Up, said that there's no accident about successful businesses. They're successful because they have the right routines. And that just cemented in my head, okay, I've got to have the right routines. Stephen Covey talks about, you know, when you launch a rocket into orbit, it's going to the moon, 85% of the rocket fuel is burned in the first 8 minutes to get out of orbit. Okay. So it's like the inertia required to start something is so immense that if all I'm doing is starting something new and doing it this way now and doing it this way, no, let's pick something that connects with our unique ability and our skills and say, like, this is how we do it now. We're going to standardize that. We're going to put some process around that. We're going to put some meeting cadence around that. And that thing is just going to work. And then we're going to iterate with 1% improvements over time. We're not going to keep doing this a different way. I would, like, my operations guy, he knows that I want to be able to go from A to Z, but every single time I go from A to Z, I do it a different way because I can. And because I want to test something new. He's like, Mark, we don't need you in operations. That's not what we do here. We're going to make incremental change. We've got something that works.
I remember you and I had a conversation. This has been probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, where, and I think this applies to this conversation. I would argue the number one way to help people create a business that allows them to be in flow, to accomplish as much as possible with as little stress or friction as possible, is to be the least important person in the day-to-day operations of your business. And you and I had a conversation. I said that one time, but I left out the end of it. I just left it off. I say it quite a bit, but I left off the day-to-day operations. And I had said that you should be the least important person in your business. And you took issue with that because you, as the owner of the business, have a huge, heavy responsibility to.
You're about to say have a huge, heavy ego. Thank you. Thank you for not saying that.
Well, I wasn't finished, but but
try to be humble.
Yeah. But we do, as an owner of the business, we do have heavy responsibility that's placed on us, and we're the only ones that can do that work. There are certain things where we're the only ones that can do that. So we should only do the things that only we can do.
That's it.
And we should get out of the way and let the rest of the team do the things that they were hired to do. We need to be the least important person in the day-to-day operations of our business. And that's how you become successful in running and owning a business, not being the operator of the business.
Yep. We should be constantly focused on how to get 80% of the stuff off our plate, empower other people with the right systems and process and tools. You know, one of the major difficulties of this is, if we could get a little granular about this, Tony, and I experienced this, and I think most people experience this when they're growing a business. I think of it like a tent. So the founder entrepreneur is the center pole in a tent. And in the beginning, we've got helpers around us that stake down the sides. So they're pulling out the side. We're the pole in the middle, and then they're pulling out the edges and they're staking down the sides. And the area in this analogy under the tent is how much revenue we can produce or how much value we're creating. Okay. Eventually we hire another leader. Their tent pole isn't quite as high as ours, and it's like over here, like 10 feet, right? And then that gets staked down, right? And so now we've expanded our capacity because there's force appliers and force multipliers. But leaders in the company are force multipliers, and the support are the force. They just keep the things going, but they're not creating the new tools and systems. So I think the point I want to make is eventually, if you're saying I want the center pole in my tent to be the least important pole in the tent, well, gee, what do we have? I actually have to get multiple poles around where that center pole was in order for that one to be removed and still have a similar surface area. And so what happens is the entrepreneur it ends up usually undervaluing how impactful they are. A lot of founder entrepreneurs can do the job of 5 or 6 full-time people, maybe more. I remember Alex Hormozi once said, yeah, we had a business and we were doing like 20 million in revenue or 30 million in net income or something like that. And then I had to remove myself from the business. And so I hired all the people necessary. And yet next year we did like 8 million in net income. Like, holy cow, $22 million less because he wasn't directly involved in the business. It was
Was
something.
that was that a $22 million loss or an $8 million gain?
There you go. Because he's a rainmaker and he can take that $22 million gain and now build something else and exponentially create other things, right?
Yep.
And that's so that right there, that's a mindset issue about how entrepreneurs incorrectly assess cost. And I'm really like, I can get on my soapbox about this because it's so important. If we look at cost as financial dollars flowing out of our bank account, we're wrong. That's a limited mindset. We will only get so far with that mindset. If we assess cost based on the opportunities foregone, which is what you just did when you spun that, when you identified that, that's the right assessment of cost. And so sometimes or often it takes 5 or 6 or 7 strong leaders, maybe that cost $70,000 to $120,000 a piece in payroll in order to replace that founder someday. And if you think that that's too much money, that's too expensive, guess what? You'll never get past that level size of business until you fix that mindset.
Yeah, I think I have found myself over the years at different points in my career really being trapped by the scarcity mindset. I can't afford to hire that person. I can't afford to invest in that leverage that is going to accelerate my business because I just can't afford it right now. For whatever reason, I've built myself into a situation where I can't do it, and I stay trapped in there longer than I should. I let, because there are times, we've talked about this in the past where when we're out running, sometimes we fall down. Sometimes we trip. Things are going along great, and all of a sudden, boom, face plant. And you have to pick yourself up. And I think I do a better job in running of picking myself up than sometimes I have in business, where I do a face plant and I lay there and I start complaining and whining about, why did this happen? What is wrong with me? How could I possibly trip? I can't possibly get up. What if I fall down again? Like, I get trapped there, and it's such a, I won't call it a disease. I don't know what else to call it though. It's like we get stuck in that scarcity mindset that prohibits us from doing the right things. And I know that there are other people who have gone through that, and I'd love to help them figure out how to get through it, get back up, get back out on the trail.
So earlier you asked me, what's a practical application of what we're talking about, kind of getting in that flow and moving through some of these limiting mindsets, because we're talking mostly abstract. And I mentioned having like a mastermind group. There's another thing, and this is super recent and relevant to me. I have been paired with a mentor that's a YPO member. YPO, Young Presidents Organization, is kind of an offshoot of Entrepreneur Organization. So I got this guy that's running $100 million business that I'm super lucky to be able to meet with once a month. And I'll tell you, Tony, the confidence that comes from laying your case out in front of someone that not only has been where you are, but has gone on to much higher heights or has has run this 200-mile race 10 times before. You have coaches, you know what this is like. And he told me on Friday, he said, Mark, based on what you're describing to me, your next hire is a director of marketing, and you need to be willing to pay them 120 to 150,000 a year. And I have 120 to 150,000 just laying around. This is like going to this scarcity mindset, this fear. It's like, how can I possibly afford that? And then shifting into this opportunity cost mindset and thinking, how can I afford not to do this? The reality, I'll just show you some actual data right now. The reality in my business right now is that we, with our current staff, can take on 300 more properties under management. And because I'm already paying the overhead, I'm already paying for the staff, and I'm already paying all this, if I brought on another 300 properties under management, the revenue difference would be $50,000 a month to my business. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I'm balking at $10,000 a month for a director of marketing? When I already have, my opportunity cost is I'm losing $40,000 a month right now. How can I afford not to hire this person? I think part of building a business is getting really clear about what your next strategic hire is and moving forward with it with confidence. And there's other elements to this. We have to build ourselves into the leader that person would want to work with, and that's kind of scary. But yeah, to simplify things, it's like identifying the talent, acquiring the talent, even though we can't afford it, leaning into that with faith and determination, and then boom, it usually works out eventually. And then we level up, and we do that again.
You know what I love about that story is that you found somebody that has done it before, and you start spending time around them, and it normalizes it. It's sort of like when you and I we used to run the roads because we didn't know any better. And then
it's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And then you're introduced to trail running, and you're like, whoa, what is this? Like, my pace is way slower.
Slower.
I'm tripping over rocks, all this stuff.
Yeah, my self-image took a hit because I'm running way slower, but this is kind of enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then you start hanging around people that have done it. And then you start figuring out, oh my gosh, there are people that run 50 miles at a time, like one day. And all of a sudden, it just becomes normal. It normalizes what's possible.
Totally.
And that's what I love about that story, is finding people who have done what you want to do and just start spending time around them. And they already know the way. He was already able to identify how to get you where you want to go. And then it's up to you to accept that and change your mindset to adapt that.
I have one more way to describe what you're talking about. And I had a business coach that I hired earlier this year that I worked with for 6 months, or actually last year. And he said, okay, set a worthy goal, one that you have no idea how you can accomplish it. It's one that scares you, and really commit to it. Really commit that it's going to happen. Then instead of like trying to, here's the goal. Instead of like trying to like straight line, force your way to that goal, instead, change your being, change your nature, change what's normal to you by moving your vibration up the ladder to the point where now you're on the same plane as that goal, and intersecting with that goal is common and maybe even boring. So that was a shift for me. I was thinking, no, I got to force my way to this goal. No, actually, I've got to change my nature, change my thinking, change who I'm hanging around with, change who I listen to, that changes my confidence level. And then actually, it just kind of makes sense that I'm living at this level. I'm intersecting with this goal just by a matter of fact. And that's how it works.
Yep. Well, I'd love to, I know we're running a little short on time. I would love to at some point take this concept that we've talked about being the least important person in the day-to-day operations of your business, figuring out how to spend your time as the entrepreneur, focused on the things that only you can do, focused on that business growth, that leadership growth, and building a team that you can trust, that you have empowered, that you give the ownership of the outcome, the authority to make decisions, the autonomy to act without your oversight. To be able to create a business like that, there is a a foundation. I have discovered over the years a formula that allows people to walk through and build that out. And I'd love to spend some time on one of our podcasts talking specifically about not just what you need to do, because I think one of the reasons why we spend so much time talking about the concept of growth as a leader and figuring out your mindset is you can give people all the tools that they need to build it, but if they don't believe that they can build it, they won't build it.
Here's my last nugget on this thread. I stole this. It's not that we need to do certain things. It's that we need to do things in a certain way. And doing things in a certain way requires that we become something different than what we are now. And that's what we're talking about.
Yep. So let's in a future podcast take the fact that we now have people that believe us, that are ready to change. Let's give them a little bit more tactical information that they can then take and stack on top of this and apply it. And I'd love to be able to provide a atmosphere or an opportunity or an environment where people can take what we're talking about and apply it. And I look forward to rolling that out at some point with you.
Let's do it.
All right.
All right.
With that, you guys have been here way too long.
You've been in this aid station too long, you person that's listening and watching, and you're rested up. Get back out there, run the rest of this race. You got it.
All right. We'll see you at the next aid station.
We'll see you at the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Property Management Success Podcast. We'll be back with another value-packed episode to help you level up your property management game. If you've got something valuable out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss out on future insights and strategies and tactics. Until next time, here's to your success.